Because indeed 20 years ago, English wine was seen as a joke. If I would have told you 10 years ago, you want to try a glass of English award-winning sparkling wine, you would have probably laughed in my face.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens,
the perfect podcast for imperfect environmentalists.
with me, Abbie, Dewhurst, and her, Imogen, Bhogal. And today we are talking English wine.
Oh, English wine at the glorious Tinwood Estate with the wonderful Jody. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So today we really want to get into the future of English sparkling wine, how the landscape has changed to allow the UK to be such a new leading place when it comes to wine production, and some of the challenges that incurs from a variable weather and sustainability perspective as well. But perhaps you could kick us off by telling us the story of Tinwood.
I would love to. So it all started in 2007. So this is now 18 years ago already.
Wow.
Which is for English wine industry quite long. But if you compare this to champagne, for example, they've been going on for so many generations. It's probably quite short. But yeah, we planted 18 years ago in 2007 with our first 20 acres. We've been planting quite a bit since. So we planted the year afterwards. We also planted in 2010, we planted in 2014 and 18 and 2020 and 2022. Now our first years that we planted straight away the classic champagne variety, so Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. The first few years when you plant a little baby plant, of course, you don't get any grapes from that yet. So it actually took us 5 years before we had some grapes, before we had our first harvest. And then by the time that was all available to drink, because we make everything in the classic traditional champagne method, all the wines, we opened up our tasting room here in 2014. So that was 11 years ago. So the first few years, it was very calm. We just had some vineyards, and my husband was studying for wine and also winemaking, and he was at Plumpton in Brighton. He also lived in a vineyard in New Zealand. The vineyard was called Hui, where it was an organic vineyard, so where he learned as well. And then when I moved over in 2014, we changed this barn, which was here on the farm already, into a tasting room. And since life has been a little bit more busy, so we opened up the tasting room in 2014. And I remember our first day was the plan was just to greet some people and sell our wine from a wine barrel. And we didn't expect that we would ever have a business like this with lodges and doing events and from afternoon tea to Sunday roast and having a restaurant. But the plan was just to grow grapes and make a little bit of wine and then sell it to the local community that were just walking in here through the door. And then it was my mom who actually came that summer when we were harvesting, and she was so intrigued to also harvest the grapes by hand. And it's such a romantic story to all year round to be living up to those grapes and then harvest them. So she wants to experience it as well. And then it was actually her who said, why don't you the next time invite some customers, some friends maybe to start off with. And I will cook them dinner afterwards. So that's a little bit where the funny hospitality was born. So we then did for the first time a harvest experience with, I think we had 8 people, and they were able to come in the morning for coffee, and I made a cake. And then we went into the vineyard and we picked grape for a few hours, and we talked to everybody. And then afterwards we cooked them lunch ourselves. Funny looking back at it 11 years ago. And that's when we started doing tours. So it was the first Saturday tour. I remember we had, at 3 o'clock, we had 6 people. And I was so nervous. And I said to my husband, I don't think I can do it. You have to do it. And then he said, you can do it, do it. And then 10 times backwards and forwards. And I did it. And that was the first tours. Then we started doing tours every day. And then a lot of people were saying, of course, it would be nice if we could stay the night here. So then the lodges were born. And then when we had lodges, everybody was, of course, all the customers were saying, it would be so nice to eat here. So then we opened up a restaurant here 2 years ago. We used to always do charcuterie plates, cheese boards with the tours. And at the moment, I have to say, life is a bit different, because then 5 years ago, we had our first son. Lucky, we've got 2 healthy sons. And then 2 years ago, we had our second son. So at the moment, my life is very much juggling in between. I have to give all my effort to the kids, trying to teach them everything and trying to be a good mom and spend time with them and not think about work. But then when the kids are in bed, I have to get all the stuff done that I wasn't able to get during the day, and I have to very much try to relax during the day and just put on a piece of paper the things that I need to do tonight. And I need to put all my effort in making sure the tasting room is perfect and all the lodges are perfect and all the events are smooth and everything needs to be perfect. Here we got a very high standard, but then juggling in between work and kids. Yeah, life is busy at the moment.
Sounds very
It was already
Very
busy just
busy.
running the estate, but now it's being a mum and running the estate. But yeah, I'm very, very lucky.
It sounds like the most
Very
magical
lucky.
story. And there's an Audrey Hepburn quote, which is, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." And I think that's lovely because nothing grows fast, does it? And you said you planted those tiny little, plug plants of vines however many years ago. And it took such a long time before you could even see a grape to pick.
Yeah.
What on earth, where did your kind of patience and tenacity come from with that?
We were lucky already that my husband, Art Tukker, his father-in-law, he bought this farm in 1985 and it was an iceberg lettuce farm. The barn that was here was an iceberg lettuce pack house. You wouldn't believe it now, this beautiful tasting room where we're sitting with the wine barrel walls and the cork walls, and it used to actually just be an iceberg lettuce shed. So we were very busy with changing that around into an office and into a tasting place. And we were busy with making a brand. So we had to make labels and a logo and the name. The name is because we are here on Tinwood Lane and we live in Tinwood House. But we had to, of course, build up the brand as well. And the website, that probably took a year. And then flyers. And I was at the beginning... We did not have many people coming here through the door. So I remember I was going, if I think about it now, how fantastic these memories, that I was actually driving around in my car 11 years ago and I was flyering around people's houses. So all the houses. And then I used to go to the car parks in Chichester, or when there was an event somewhere, a Goodwood Festival event, a food event, I was going and I was putting a flyer in between every car, on all the car windows. All that kind of fun. Then it became more busy, so that was not necessary anymore. And then we were visiting restaurants, asking if they wanted to have our wine, if they could sell our wine. So it was really building up a brand. And then after a year, we hired a girl here to come and help us. And then, then it became much busier. Then we also had someone in the office doing all the accounts. And of course, Art has his whole vineyard team as well. So we've got around 10 guys in the vineyard working all year round, from tractor drivers to the beginning of the year when we're planting vine. Of course, we've got a whole vine planting team, but otherwise through the whole year we've got a fantastic team that we're very grateful that we've actually had them from the beginning. It was just a gentleman from Portugal, and then he hired his brother, and then he hired his cousin, and then his wife came, and then his father came, and then his son afterwards came. So we still got the original family here that have been working here for the last 11 years. So it just grew from absolutely nothing. Fantastic.
I think one of the things that really strikes me is that English sparkling wine has become hugely popular in probably the last 7 or so years in particular.
Correct.
But back in 2007, it was pretty pioneering to say, I think this is a sensible direction.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also can imagine that in that 5-year period, whilst you were very, very busy, there probably was in the back of your mind, are we going to pull this off?
What have we done?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess take us back to that moment of looking at, okay, it's an iceberg lettuce farm at the moment. How do we need to future-proof this business? How was it that wine was identified as, like, I think this is going to be a big thing for the UK?
So the very lucky thing that we have always known is, I think, an advantage for Art before we started off the vineyard here, is that he was born here on this farm.
Yeah.
So he knew exactly, I mean, you can do a soil analysis, but we have seen it from the moment that we were born.
Yeah.
So we know exactly here what soil we are on. Now, for me, I do a lot of gardening. It's pretty annoying sometimes, I would say difficult, the soil that we have, but we've got this mixture of chalk and flint, and if you want to plant anything, then you need to get guys to put, for instance, a rose bush in your garden, because if you put a spade in the ground,
It's
you
rock
just
solid.
can't get it in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we've always known that we are here actually on what we call the channels of chalk and flint. And these channels of chalk and flint is actually what the most famous wine regions around us all claim. The fact that they make such a fantastic wine is because they are on those channels of chalk and flint. So if you look at the history of Champagne said that the fact that they make the best sparkling wines in the whole wide world in the previous generation. Of course, global warming is unfortunately lucky for England, but for Champagne it's been very negative because they've had the last, let's say, few generations this perfect climate, but now we are starting to get this perfect climate because it's starting to get more hotter. So we know that we are on this fantastic soil. So Champagne has always said that the reason that those wines are so fantastic is because they grow on chalk and flint. Now, if you go to, for instance, Chablis, they also say that their wines are so fantastic because they grow on chalk and flint. So we knew we were sitting on this gold pot for vines, but nothing else. So the lettuce was grown on topsoil, which requires a lot of maintenance on the soil. You're constantly irrigating, what we don't have to do now, because these vines, they can grow up to 10, 20 meters deep to get their water from the chalk and from the flint. We don't have to put topsoil down. You plant the vines and they will just grow the depth to wherever they will get their water source. So that we knew that already, that we're sitting on this perfect terroir for vines. Then we did actually an investigation in maybe planting olive trees.
Oh yeah.
We did a study on that, but that took too long. I think it was something like 25 years before the olive trees were finally producing and the olive was made before you're able to. We knew that vines was a long time as well, but not so long. And then there were just a few other vineyards in the UK. There were not many, but also they were saying that the reason that they do so well is because they grow on chalk and flint. Not everybody grows on chalk and flint. Other vineyards in the north, or maybe in Hampshire, or maybe in Norfolk, they'll be growing on clay or maybe sand. So you will taste the different wines as well. Our wines here on the estate, they're, compared to a lot of other wines, it may be more north of England, they're very crispy and very mineral because they drink from the chalk, their water, and they grow on the flint. And then being so close to the sea as well, where we are here in Chichester, so close to the sea, you get this fresh sea climate in the summer, so you get the cool air, and in the winter you get sort of what we'll probably talk about later a little bit more, this warm air, so we're a little bit less frost protected. So we're here also in the warmest place of mainland Britain, what you've probably heard about as well. So yeah, we knew that we were sitting on this pot of gold for vines. So then we had a few advices in from Champagne to just indeed confirm that this was correct, and they actually said as well that to grow Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier in particular, these three grapes would be fantastic on the soil. So although maybe there's tons of different grape varieties, they all would not do well in this soil. They all would not do well in this climate. So they need different soil, and they need hotter. For example, if we now say, let's tomorrow make a red wine like they make in Rioja, that is not possible in this soil, in this climate. But unfortunately, we do everything we can against global warming, of course, for the next generations, for our children, for everybody. But unfortunately, global warming is what has made England now a wine country. Because indeed 20 years ago, English wine was seen as a joke. If I would have told you 10 years ago, you want to try a glass of English award-winning sparkling wine, you would have probably laughed in my face. And now we know it is hot enough to make these wines here.
I mean, it just must have been so exciting at the time. And it's also, I think, quite representative of, like, you know, adapt or die. It is a farm that relies so much on, you know, weather. I'm a weather forecaster, so I've been focusing on the weather for so long. And when we've just seen, you know, one of the driest, it probably will end up being the driest May on record for over 100 years. And when you're giving a forecast like that, and you know that Joe Public will probably be quite pleased that it's not rained for all of May. Gorgeous. And that's often what the weather is referred to. It's so gorgeous, Abbie. It's so gorgeous. Is the gorgeous weather going to last? Is what I quite often get asked. And in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, but gardeners and growers, I'm from rural Lincolnshire, you know, we have a really big farming community there, particularly pea farmers. And so I think I can imagine, you know, your whole livelihood relying on some words that are coming out of my mouth feels quite a big responsibility, and you are literally relying on Mother Nature.
Correct.
But you have adapted to that. You've gone, right, our climate has changed, our landscape has changed, our soil has changed, everything has changed. We must now change with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really admirable. But is there also an element of, yes, excitement, yes, it's led to this whole new business, but also this underlying concern, particularly like you say, you have 2 children now, at looking at how much things have changed?
Yes. I have to say we are very well in adapting. We very much look ahead of technology here on this farm. In comparison to in Champagne, they look at traditions.
Yeah.
We very much...
Interesting.
There's not much history in England about wine, so you also would... For us, we have no
You're making history.
generation to look back at.
Yeah.
We are making history indeed with our 18 years, for example. But we very much look ahead of technology. So, for example, we see here in England, we are more frost affected than in Champagne. In Champagne, you see that they have these bougie candles. Then my husband, a few years ago, he went to California, where they had these fantastic big machines that you drive around the vineyard, and it blows air, hot air, and it reaches 5 rows to the right and 5 rows to the left. So we drive every time we have a frost here. We're driving around in the middle of the night with all of our guys here in the vineyards. It sounds ridiculous, but
Like
all the way from like 3 a.m.
Preventing the frost.
Preventing the frost. So we've got to do that all the time. And for example, a really interesting thing as well, which comes back to what we're talking about now, irrigation you normally wouldn't do in a vineyard. But then 2 years ago, we actually looked at just getting a quote, not putting it in, but what would it cost us? Because it was indeed 2 years ago that we had such a hot summer.
Yeah.
That it didn't rain for 6 weeks in a row. And then we actually found out that if it doesn't rain for 6 weeks, that those grapes, yes, they do dig maybe 10 or 20 meters deep to drink from the chalk. But after 2 weeks, also the chalk is dried up and they don't drink anymore. And we actually found out that then after 2 weeks sort of, it was the fine edge of them not growing anymore. But then if they're supposed to grow for sort of 3 months, we say the grapes are supposed to grow in July, August, September. You normally say 100 days for the grapes to grow. If you then have 6 weeks of no rain, which is fantastic for us in the summer, what we wish for, the grapes don't grow for those last 4 weeks. But if the grapes only grow for 100 days, it means that the grapes are actually missing a quarter or a third of their size. So suddenly we're not making 200,000 bottles, but suddenly we're only making 120,000 bottles.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're losing a lot of money. So we are always adapting, always.
And I suppose that's the thing that's often missing sometimes from the climate conversation here in the UK. We look at the wine industry and think, fantastic, it's warmer here. It is warmer, but it's also much more variable, and that means that you have to have so much more innovation to be able to mitigate for that huge variability. The really wet spells that we've seen in recent years,
and
really dry spells.
unpredictability. You know, often our weather is changing so much, and you know, I get asked, "Oh, you got the forecast wrong." Well, yeah, it's a forecast. It's not an exact science. You know, we're a tiny island surrounded by ocean, and so again, your whole livelihood depending on that weather forecast being accurate. I can't even imagine how you juggle that and how you deal with that, and how you forecast in terms of, you know, spend revenue and as a business. And is that something that, do you have good relationships with other vineyards in around the area or in the country? Can you all get together and bang your head against a brick wall?
Counselling together.
At the moment, yes, we are still all very friendly together. There's always this fear that if we one day would become competitors. And also maybe the good thing about this is that the vineyards at the moment are still all very wide apart. So the real competition is maybe only when they're on your doorstep, when they take away your customers for coming here, but also for buying your wine. At the moment, we don't really have that yet. So all the vineyards are very much spread apart.
You've got a WhatsApp group chat.
WhatsApp group app, indeed. Now, we are very friendly. We are part of the Southeast Vineyard Association. I think also maybe it's because we are we were 21 when we planted the vines. So still now we consider ourselves young, sorry. We are young, so we are very friendly with everybody. There's not that we had a finance business and we've got this pot of 20 million behind us and we retired, we're 55 and we're going to buy a vineyard and pump all of our money in and we're going to not be there on site. We're just a financial. Then I can imagine those kind of vineyards run. Maybe they are not so... interested or engaged with other vineyards, but because we are, our rule, me and my husband, is that always one of us is here. That's always one of us. We're very much engaged with the soil and with the farm and with nature, and I'm doing the bees and I've got all of this wildlife here built up on the farm, which I will tell you a little bit more about later. But that's also probably a reason why we're very engaged with other vineyards, because we are always here.
Yeah, and it is your livelihood and it's your family and it's an extension of your family.
It is everything we do. Every decision gets run past us. Everything that we set up is set up by us, and then our amazing team takes over. But
one of the things that I've seen written is that you've said that the vineyard is forever, and there are loads of beautiful sustainable practices that you implement here. I wonder if you could run us through some of those.
Yes. So, of course, this has been quite of a hype the last few years. We always joke that when Dad was running the iceberg lettuce business here, this kind of a conversation would not happen about sustainable and going greener and being good for the environment. Now, we are very much, again, young farmers, and Mom and Dad live here on the farm. We live on the farm, and we already know, of course, we are gonna, our children gonna live in the house where we live now. So we will be here forever. So every rose bush I plant will be there forever. And even when we now have vines being planted, we take pictures with the children being there when they run this business in 30 years time. They can have pictures of them showing, I planted these vines. The wine that you're drinking now, I planted is when I was 6 weeks old. So we're very much looking ahead of the future, and we're very much going green. Indeed, I would say probably the last 3 to 4 years has been very much on our minds. I've always been a little bit of a green freak. I'm very, very much in love with nature and with animals. Very much, I always say, if I wouldn't have a vineyard, I would probably be working in a zoo. But already from when I was a child, I was very interested always in everything with insects and with nature. So I think also if maybe my husband would have a wife that would be in finance in London, maybe this would all not be so pushed, but I'm very much pushing in getting greener. So what we've done the last few years is I did 12 years ago, I did a course and I'm part of the Chichester Beekeeping Association and the British Beekeeping Association. So we got beehives all around the farm, and I daily put my bee suit on and check my bees, and my kids know exactly where the beehives are. For that, then we have been already, the last 10 years ago already, we planted lots of fields with wildflowers, but at the moment it's been going a little bit maybe too nuts, that indeed everything from the end of the vine, so all the hedges around the vines, they are all... My husband is not allowed to trim them down anymore. He has to let them grow higher because of everything from insects to mice to rabbits to just everything, to be able to not just constantly having to fear for farmers, but they're able to roam around. Then in between our vines, we now planted wildflowers as well. We have in between our vines a mixture of lots of different greens, like poppies are planted every year to increase pollen around the farm, for biodiversity, for all the insects, and for celia, common daisies, sunflowers, and then also things that don't flower but are very good for natural soil health. For example, turnips or clovers or buckwheats. And then constantly when you say, for example, you drill all of these seeds in between the vines. Normally you go through in a machine and you actually spray the weeds with chemicals, so the weeds die. So then you see in between these vines, you see these yellow, dried out, chemically burned down weeds. For us, we actually drill seeds in the middle. So for us, if you look in the middle of the vines, you actually see this meter-high a mixture of greens.
Yeah.
But that will eventually then also drain away the energy from the soil. So you can't let it just grow up as high as the vines. You go through with a normal plow, and you plow in between these vines. And then everything that you plow, basically, it just dies off, but gets mixed back into the soil.
Oh,
and then when it rains, all of
like
the
natural composting.
all of the natural compost then puts everything back in the ground, from calcium to iron, everything that we need. And then constantly my husband is doing soil analysis, so there's parts maybe where he has to plant more daisies or other parts in the vineyard where he has to plant more clover. So I'm very proud that if you look in between the vines, and also if you drive into the estate, you see all the poppy fields. And then at the moment, I've got nesting boxes everywhere. So I'm very curious soon.
Get some little cameras in
Yeah.
there.
With little cameras in and also little hedges to see. But 3 months ago, we hanged up a whole army of barn owl boxes. Everywhere, bed boxes. We've got this very high concentration of rare beds, nowhere found in the UK, found here actually where we are now. They when it gets dark. I did last week. I did with South in a partnership with South Downs. I did this bed survey, and just when it gets dark, we were walking around with these machines, and we were seeing all the beds flying around, and it was telling us exactly how rare the beds were and what kind of beds were. And then it comes up on your phone, and afterwards you get this report. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I'm a little bit maybe of a green person. But we've got hedgehogs boxes in the hedges for the hedgehogs. We've got kestrel boxes. We've got dormouse boxes. The whole vineyard, the whole estate. The estate is 200 acres. We only got 105 acres planted with vines, so half the farm is not planted. And there's an abundance of wildlife here on the farm.
And I think often when we do talk about being sustainable or being green, certainly a lot of the conversations we've had are like things that you're changing, reducing the amount of plastic that you use and changing the materials that you use in a certain way. And we've actually not really had many conversations that are about increasing biodiversity and just actually putting more back, putting more good into. But interestingly, we've recorded a podcast with Wimbledon, which will be out very shortly, and I think the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, when you go, it is so beautiful. But actually speaking to the gardeners, what they often say, because they, like you, are so into nature and so into biodiversity, it's that difficult balance. I think particularly when you've got this gorgeous vineyard as well, and you're wanting people to come here and it to look beautiful, but actually if plants are there to benefit insects and to benefit wildlife, it shouldn't necessarily look perfect and pristine, and that's pretty much impossible to do without chemicals and without weed killers. And looking out and seeing actually your vines look beautiful and organised, but a little bit on the rustic and rugged side, and seeing a hedge look a little bit, overgrown, that actually is something that I think we need to get used to seeing more as in terms of like hospitality and luxury and what luxury looks like as well.
Totally correct. Totally.
Yeah.
Instead of driving in everywhere and everything being totally mowed, realize indeed when you're mowing down how many insects and bees and bumblebees, and you are at that moment destroying the nest and everything off.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
No,
I love seeing wild fields.
Yes,
There's
same.
nothing so beautiful that when you're driving around and you're seeing wheels and
spotted
wildflowers
the
in the
poppies.
wind when they're waving around. Stunning.
I know, I'm totally with you. And, we have stayed in one of the lodges last night, which you've got, how many lodges have you got here now?
8. We opened 5 more lodges last year.
Oh, and they seamlessly just fit into the landscape as well. They've got these wild mossy roofs, which I guess is also natural insulation, so amazing. I wonder how much, again, you're kind of green, as you called it, green freak. We'll go with green queen.
Let's
drive
green queen. That sounds very good.
I wonder how much of that was in the back of your mind when you were building these lodges as well.
Very. So indeed, what we want to sell, what we want to image is that you are coming here for really quiet nature stay.
Yeah.
So we very much encourage walking around the farms. So there's a walking map in your lodge, and then we very much encourage people to sit outside overlooking these vines, and then you're sitting in between the flowers. And then we've got the mountain bikes to bike around the farm. And also, for example, already that sauna that we built last year, the brand new sauna, it's got this big glass panel, and you look inside the woods, because isn't that fantastic when you're sitting in a sauna and you're looking at nature? So from December all the way to January, February, it's all yellow because of the daffodils.
Yeah.
Now, don't you get happy when you look at a daffodil in that time of year? It's cold, but you see those beautiful, crisp yellow daffodils, and then afterwards you're sitting in the sauna and you're seeing all the bluebells pop up, and then you see a squirrel walking by. Don't you straight away want to get your camera out and straight away take a picture if you see a squirrel?
Yeah. You feel very connected.
We see them all the time, but it's just that we all love nature, and that's very much what we want to show here. Nature and rustic, so the lodges are from woods, and all the furniture is very woody and all very quirky. It's not IKEA kind of furniture, but from China it's very much homemade from wine barrels and cork. So we really want to give that naturistic in a vineyard with a glass of bubbles. And also during our tours we always educate people, realize what you're drinking, what happens through the vineyard. We go through of us pruning these vines in the winter. We go through this whole life cycle of being out in nature, pulling out leaves to give the energy to the fruit, the soil, the grapes drinking the rainwater so they grow for their sugar levels, acidity levels, then afterwards halving this, all done by hand as well. It's such a romantic story. Then the wines are only made from sugar and yeast. We get natural first fermentation, second fermentation, so it's not just pumped in fizz, but it's a natural process which requires another 3 years of patience afterwards, another whole labor or love to grow these vines until they're ready to harvest, but also to make this wine. So we want to really give that whole nature experience, but also that love for all the effort that goes in being in harmony of nature. That's what you're drinking.
And I think there's that narrative of you can't protect what you don't understand. And if you're popping a bottle like this over a nice celebration with your family and you have absolutely no clue how it got there, and then let's say, I don't know, you only have a couple of glasses and you think I'll just chuck the rest because it's the disconnect. When you're shopping in a supermarket, you don't see any of this. You've no idea what process has led to getting in this bottle. You come here, you're educated by the people who have got their hands in those vines and have physically planted them. You understand the story. I think you are so much more appreciative of the product and therefore that connection with nature, and therefore that responsibility that we all have to try and make sure that we can continue to do this forever.
And I think the other thing that really strikes me in hearing you paint this extremely romantic picture, and one that is so important for consumers like ourselves to connect with once we're painstakingly drinking a glass of English sparkling wine. But it's all around sort of recalibrating our sense of luxury and actually trusting nature to be very precise. But you won't see that precision because it looks a bit more sort of wild. But actually, nature's very good at doing things in a very precise way, in a very scientific way, and you've got to sort of outsource that trust in a way. And I think that's probably what living in harmony with nature is building that trust, trusting that they know exactly how to manage it.
And of course there are things that are difficult, and then we talk about the positives, but like last year, for instance, we had a big hit here in the UK wine industry, because last year the yield was down by half. There's a lot of vineyards that last year did not even harvest, so
and that's the impact of the previous year's very dry spell, is it?
Last year was very wet. Very wet. We had a very wet summer. The year before was very dry.
Yeah, so it's that extreme.
Indeed,
isn't it?
the weather is so extreme at the moment. It's so you can't.
When it's dry for 6 weeks, and when it rains, we get a month's worth of rain in 4 days.
Correct. And for example, this year as well, we've had such a summer already in March and April, and in the beginning of May, and then you will see that eventually I now think about the school holidays instead of me thinking about spring and summer and winter. That's when it's school holiday and all the kids are off. That's when I used to always think in the 90s when I grew up. Summer holidays when it's dry. In June, July, August, it's 3 months totally dry. But summers are changing. It seems to be the last couple of years really wet in the summer. for me, when the kids are off, suddenly I've got the kids at home and it's wet, and then before and afterwards it's so dry. But that's when the grapes are establishing, so they sort of start growing after flowering. They sort of grow established, just the grape, not the plant. In July, August, September, that's the most crucial 3 months of grapes. And then if you then experience a lot of rain, we are here open in the air. We have no polytunnels. That's probably why you came to us as well. You probably wouldn't go to the vineyard in glasshouse or in polytunnels, but everything is open, so we can't do anything about it. We are reliable on what the weather brings us. So
and do you think
some years we make a lot, some years we hardly make anything.
Was there an element of future-proofing when it comes to building the lodges and looking at the restaurant and looking at how else you can make revenue as a business as well if you are so exposed to just Mother Nature?
Yes, it's probably also a reason why we have this hospitality industry. A lot of vineyards do now start to get hospitality, because indeed that is just an all year round more safe spot. So even though next week it rains, you already have your hospitality set up. So that's a little bit more of a of course it is reliable to the weather as well when we do an event and it rains. Of course it's important as well, but indeed all of the tourism is what makes it a little bit more reliable with growing grapes in good years, in bad years, making a lot of wine, making not so much wine. That's very much where the hospitality helps us.
So if you could be given sort of one or two things from your wish list, things that you're like, do you know what? If we had those one or two things, I would have this number of fewer worries and life would be that much easier. What would you ask for?
I would probably say more drier summers. Not hotter. Not important. As long as we're sitting in the clouds and it's not sunny, it's fine, but less wet summers. And I know that my husband would probably vote. He wouldn't even think about summer. He wouldn't think about rain or not, or Saturdays when we've, of course, got a lot of people through the doors. All of his worry would be frost. If we wouldn't be able to get any frost anymore, and frost is fine through the winter, but sort of our vines wake up. We normally say the 1st of April. That's not a joke. Then no frost afterwards anymore. So at the moment that the vineyard wakes up, at the moment that the buds open up, at the moment that the vine wakes up and you see the green leaves coming out, then when we get a frost, we will lose everything overnight. If my husband gets caught out and he is not aware of the frost starting at 11 o'clock already in the evening, he thinks it's going to start at 4 a.m. because
that's
the weather lady said it was 4 a.m. I wasn't prepared. Then it would be from 11 to 4, 5 hours of frost. Those vines, 10 minutes below 0 degrees, all that green that would have woken up would have all indeed get frostbite and die off. So you can lose your entire farm, your entire vineyard, your entire crop, your entire year's worth of wine within 10 minutes if you don't know. So that's probably his biggest worry. But then I'm not sitting on the 1st of April with machines at 3 a.m. driving around with tractors. I definitely do the best part of the business.
I think we do the best bit of the business.
Yes, definitely. The sampling.
Happy to come back. And I will say as well, I've just been very fortunate to do a big family holiday, which has been years in the planning, to South Africa. We did that in January, and went to Franschhoek and Stellenbosch and did lots of.
You will recognise what we do here, what they do. Instead of sit down, come to your table service, we very much do this tapa. Our vineyard kitchen as well. I shouldn't forget to mention that. We're talking very much about green up there, but we're trying to do this with food as well. Of course, that's a little bit more difficult because food doesn't just all get grown here. It actually does get brought in the ingredients, but we're very much trying to not use any plastic here in our vineyard kitchen. Very much everything is local ingredients, so it's coming from closer. We're trying to, it's on our website as well, we're really trying as good as we can to have everything local and sort of sustainable in the vineyard kitchen. We only opened that 1.5 years ago, so that was very much part of the plan. It's not that we had to change an already restaurant that was running for 30 years with into sustainable. We opened it as sustainable. And here with our bottles as well, all of our bottles all get recycled. They get melted into new bottles, not by us, but we really do try to with everything.
And I think that's really exciting if you think about newer businesses. You know, obviously you guys have planted these vines and it's been a long-standing love project for you guys, but it's not been, like you say, this legacy company where you've got generations worth of practices and suppliers and almost like habits to break. You're creating a new way of working, and that is so exciting to think going forward. You know, we arrived yesterday, we did the tasting at lunch, we picked up a few bits from your kind of lunch offering to bring back, and straight away you do notice no plastic in sight. Everything is in little glass jars, Kilner jars, it's all refillable.
The portions are even very sensible to, I think, to discourage waste, and like you're actively picking up that thing. So you have that sort of very much awareness of, if I'm picking this up, I'm going to eat it and not waste it as well.
Fantastic. It's good that you...
And whether
not everybody likes a food concept like that, but that's very much what they do in South Africa.
Exactly.
You going to Stellenbosch?
We went to Stellenbosch. There's lots of synergies here, but it's so wonderful. And my parents loved that so much. They had such a wonderful time, and they had to fly a really long way to do it. But now that I feel like I can go back, and I was reading this article that I mentioned to you the other day, and I think it was Country Homes and Interiors magazine, and they've done a 3 to 5 day itinerary of English vineyards and wine tours in the same way that you would go to somewhere like Provence or, you know, South Africa and do these, you know, staying in the vineyards, going and doing the wine tasting. We have that offering in the UK now, which is so exciting.
Which is still very unknown,
Yeah.
but yes,
we're getting the message out.
British wine tours.
Yeah. No, I think it's absolutely amazing. And
fantastic.
It's, you know, this new, I think we talk to a lot of people about new stuff, innovative stuff, you know, companies that are in their infancy, and obviously that comes with a lot of risk and a lot of fear, but also a lot of excitement and a lot of new ideas.
And also new opportunities of how people who already live in the UK can experience and enjoy the UK, and not having to jet off to France to actually say, well, how can I experience and discover Chichester and everything that it has to offer, and appreciate that, you know, it's sort of, in a way, it's quite difficult having this conversation, because the reason that wine can be grown here is because of climate change.
Yeah.
The reason that growing wine here remains challenging is also because of the variability of climate change. But actually, if it allows people to consume locally and to really have a visceral understanding of what the local climate means, then that's a very, very positive force for good as
we
well.
probably wouldn't have come and done an iceberg tasting session.
Probably not.
I'm not to lie.
And also, indeed, now, in the next month, if you are going to be buying a bottle of bubbly, you would not buy a bottle of champagne. You know that.
Yes.
All of this amazing stuff grown in Britain, why on earth would you go to supermarkets and buy a bottle of champagne if we can make all of this fantastic stuff on our doorstep? And that's, again, very good for carbon footprint as well. You're sourcing it from close and not... So it's...
And again, it's having that understanding. It's always so nice. It's like when somebody says, "Oh, I love your top," and you go, "Oh, it was second hand," or "Oh, it was a bargain." It's that, you know, "Oh, this wine's wonderful. Oh, it's from this gorgeous English sparkling wine vineyard in Chichester that we went to."
The story.
We love the backstory. So no, I mean, I think also really wonderful to find out that yes, this is your husband's family farm. You brought your family into it when you married into it. You know, your mum was here literally cooking the food on the first day. The individual that you first found to plant the vines, he brought his whole family over from was it Portugal, you said?
Yes.
From
the vineyard workers.
So it's almost like this huge, great family effort, and it very much, you get that sense when you're here.
And we're very much of a family business.
Yeah, I mean, you described yourself
very much
as you sat down. I'm a farmer's wife. And interestingly, this is a complete side, but you know when you're little and you have to say what you want to be when you grow up.
I love this story.
We drew you had to draw a little picture, and of all the things I could have said when I was little, I drew this picture and I put, "I'm Abbie, and when I grow up I want to be a farmer's wife."
Oh,
that's so cute. And now I'm here, I'm like, this is what I meant. Clearly I wanted to own a vineyard.
Sorry, my sons are very young still. They're only 1 and 5, so...
I mean, my plans have changed slightly since then, but and my parents moved out of our family home last year, and my dad sent me a photo of this very drawing that said, "I'm Abbie, when I grow up I want to be a farmer's wife." So it made me laugh so much when you sat down and you said, "I'm a farmer's wife," and I thought, oh, I've met my dream.
I know the exact same activity that I had to do at school, and I know that I wrote Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
And part of well, I mean, I would really love a personal flying machine. That would, you know, still holding out hope for that one. But B, I think one of the reasons I wanted to be a tooth fairy was because I love interior design, and as a tooth fairy, you get to see what other people's houses look like.
So
highly logical.
Do you think this is what you would have written as your dream life?
I think I would have probably said work in a zoo.
Yeah.
And that's why we're very much
I mean, you
green
have
out
2
here.
sons and you run a vineyard,
Yeah,
so it's
the
wild.
same. Yeah, it's a wildlife, correct.
We've started this new thing, actually. We've not trialled it yet, but Chris, who sets up this amazing recording and follows us around the country going to these wild places, always at the end of a podcast says, I would have asked them this. And so we thought, well, let's start introducing the Chris question. So Chris, as we're coming to the end of this podcast, do you have a question for Jody?
Can we practice this first? Or?
Well, like, what my head immediately goes to is like a disaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has there been a day where you've sat down and thought, we need to have a little sulk,
Yeah.
perhaps a little cry, and we'll pick ourselves up tomorrow?
Let's think about the worst things that have ever happened here. My husband once, but that's not nice to tell. The worst thing that ever happened was, apart from a hail in the vineyard once that snapped off the branches and we lost 10% of our vines.
Was that so hail?
The hail
Oh
just
my gosh.
before we started harvesting our grapes. I reckon it was around 2 to 3 weeks earlier. So that would have then probably be the first week of September. And we were sitting at home and it was in the evening at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening and it was a hail. And then we had to, afterwards, straight away, we did not have any kids yet, so we straight away went into the vineyard after the hail. It was just a quick 1 or 2 minutes hailstorm, and then we lost around 10% of the branches snapped off. But also when there's a storm, also branches snap off. Or and frost. We once had a year that we lost everything on frost, but that was in our second year ever. So that's, we're talking about 17 years ago. So that's not going to happen again. But my biggest disaster ever. If you want to hear it, oh my goodness. I can still cry about it now if I think about it. So we do these lovely events and then we once thought we're going to do a Christmas New Year party. And like us always, everything organized, drinks, place looked fantastic, all organized. And then just before the party started, I reckon it started at 7 o'clock in the evening,
Oh, gosh.
a minute before, power tripped.
Oh.
And whatever we did, we couldn't get it back on. So we called the electrician, very lucky that he was able to get onto site within 2 hours. And with a generator at the back of the kitchen, plugged everything and everything was working. But we still had between 7 and 9 people turning up in the dark,
Yeah.
all dressed up. So all we could do is go upstairs and find every torch and tea lights that we had. So we found around 100 tea lights, lit up the whole place. There was no music, no payments. So we were trying to talk to people and say, we were trying to make it an earth evening.
Yeah.
Trying to be good with nature, again, green, but no, that didn't go down well either. So then afterwards, because of that fear, what happened, we never did a Christmas party again. We were so worried. I mean, the power hasn't tripped since, but still, that was for me one of the most disastrous days ever. Indeed, having no electricity in the lodges, loose are then not able to flush.
Of course.
Then there's no music. You realize at that moment, unfortunately for us, you realize at that moment how reliable, how dependent we are.
Yeah.
Well,
Afterwards, I bought afterwards these big torches that you can put that lights up a whole room. And I've got a few of those now.
You need to get planting some solar in some of your acres
We've
of
got
land.
solar panels now, up the wine barns as well. But yeah, it makes you realize, unfortunately, in 2025, how reliable, this was a few years ago, but how reliable we are
on the grid. Yeah.
the
You
grid.
were abroad when the blackout recently.
Portugal.
in
And
Portugal, in Spain.
yes, and we had exactly the same feeling because
It's panic these days as well. It's pure panic.
yeah,
Hospitals, airports.
everything, and also no internet either. And it meant that it had this feeling of like it was the end of the world. It felt like the start of a Black Mirror episode. And then you think, how ridiculous that we've got to that point where that's the first feeling that we feel.
Yep.
But it also really does make the case for building in that resilience through alternative solutions like solar, like having the torches on hand. But yeah, it's sort of
Panic
frozen.
and then knowing
Yeah.
that you can't speak to anybody on your mobile phone for a
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
such a panic. But
Yeah.
when we were traveling, when we were young, you used to only speak to your parents once a
know.
month. It was normal, but now
Yeah.
it's such a panic.
Yeah, we probably need a little lesson in sort of safeguarding, don't we? And what to do if, and we need to
Yeah.
start having those
Yeah.
conversations. But I mean, that sounds absolutely. So no more Christmas parties pending for Tinwood.
You know where to go if everything closes down. Come here. We've got a lot of wine in stock that at least we can drink.
If it
At
is the
least
end
we'll
of
have
the world.
we'll have a good party here on site.
Well, that was it. That was it. Well, so me and my husband, we were on holiday, and there was not much that we could do because everything was shut, and we were all waiting for the information. So we sat in the garden of this beautiful farm, drinking Negronis. We had some of the best conversations that we've ever had in our lives.
Fantastic.
I'm like, wow, this was great. This is
Great
a perfect
memory.
outcome.
Yeah, great memory.
Yeah.
Where were you when? So, okay, no Christmas parties for the future of Tinwood. But I wonder if you do have any, grand plans. Are you happy with the way things are? Is it just a case of continuing to tick things over? What is your future at Tinwood?
We opened up last year 5 extra lodges, which was really a big of my dream. Lodges are very much my thing, making sure that everything looks beautiful and the interior designing and setting something up that's very quirky, very unique. My husband's biggest dream at the moment is maybe one day opening up here a restaurant in the evening,
Yeah.
which I'm a little bit wary about, of course, because I've got 2 little kids at home. Then I'm thinking about the easy stuff. I have to put the kids every evening in bath and bed myself, so that's a bit of a
Selfishly.
nonsense excuse to not open up a restaurant, but that's what I'm a little bit worried about at the moment. So he's very much keen of opening a restaurant here on site, probably in the next few years. And
What about the future of your children growing up here?
I can't wait for that. I do still quite a few tours here a week, so you'll probably see me on average doing 3-4 tours a week. My husband as well. So again, we're very engaged when there's big groups, or we're always here on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday still doing a tour ourselves as the owner, which is very unique in England to actually meet the owner when you come for wine tasting. But you will always meet up because there's always someone here. But then I always say during my tours, wow, can you imagine here in 30 years' time, you're going to be here again. And then my children are doing a tour, and we set this all up, and it's going to be very, very nice for them to take over such a fantastic place that mom and dad set up. But then we were very grateful and very lucky that dad bought this farm in 1985, which for a 21-year-old, you would not be able to buy a 200 acres estate when you're 21. We were able to take over this 200 acres estate and plant 20 acres of vines. Afterwards, again, we were able to. We were back then. We were the youngest vineyard owner in the UK when we were 21.
Wow.
The first 5 or 8 years, we were the youngest ones having vines in the UK. So that is, thank God because of that he bought this farm, and then we're going to be passing over this to our sons. How fantastic! We always joke that one of them is going to then run the vineyard, and the other one is going to run the wine business. So at the moment we all say, Daddy makes the wine, Mommy drinks the grapes, which is of course not just, which is maybe
do a
true,
little more
maybe it
than
is
that,
true.
yeah.
But you'll probably see that our dream is that one of the boys would then do the growing, the viticulture, the growing of the grapes, and then together they would make the wine, and then one would have his task of selling the wine to restaurants and to the trade and having the place look nice, because it's very difficult we now know as well to do everything.
And to
we always say
mode switch.
We always say, if you try to do 100 things yourself, all of them are not perfect.
No.
So that's why we now have a manager, and we have a marketing manager, and we have a trade manager, and our restaurant, we have a manager there as well, because if you just focus on 10 things, you can do all those 10 things.
Brilliantly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so much better if people have their own task. And I want everything to be perfect up here. We have a very high standard with having lots of gardeners, and every flower that is dead needs to be picked off so a new flower can grow. So we're very much on the high spec here. Very much OCD. So it's very good to split those things up into one vineyard and the wine.
But I think that is very evident when you're walking around here, and also when you're tasting the quality of the food and of obviously the drink, the wine, why we are here. It has been so wonderful. I
Thank
honestly
you so
think we
much
could
for
sit here
coming
and
to
talk
stay with us
all day.
And I think next time we need to pop open a bottle and
Yeah.
carry on
Agree.
this conversation.
Do you want a glass now?
Don't tempt us. We've got to drive home.
Assuming you had a few glasses yesterday.
We did.
We had more than a
made,
few.
We made
Yeah.
very good use of the
Fantastic.
facilities, shall we say?
Fantastic. Pure work.
Yes.
You
Someone's got
worked
to do it.
all through the evening last
Yeah.
night. Well done.
Never stop. We're coming on Green Queen.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Green Queens.
If you did and you'd like to hear more, we'd be so very grateful if you could like,
Subscribe and join the Green Group Chat for weekly episodes.